All right, well, it's time to go back in time a little bit, back to one of my favorite eras of the Star Wars Legends EU. It's the Bantam publishing era. And boy, is there some amazing stuff in that period. You've got the Zahn trilogy, you've got, I Jedi, you've got the X-Wing books. I mean, the list goes on and on, the Bounty Hunter Wars. One of my favorite things, though, and one of my favorite things really out of the entire Star Wars Legends EU, is this project right here, The Shadows of the Empire. Now, this came out in 1996, and this book was written by Steve Perry. But what's really cool about this is that this was an early, ambitious, and extremely well executed multimedia tie-in project, right? So this isn't unlike, say, the Clone Wars project the following decade with some TV shows and some tie-in books and with comic books and Tartakovsky Clone Wars, and then later the Filoni Clone Wars. But this Shadows of the Empire is fantastic. It's ambitious. It's exciting. I mean, the cover alone, the artwork is fantastic. You can still sometimes find on eBay and various places online posters of the entire. There I am of the entire cover here. But again, it's not just a book. What's really neat is that there are different versions of the book. There are comic books. There are, there was an action figure line. Lots of other fun things too. And what I want to do briefly is just to sort of show just a few of the things in the range of the Shadows of the Empire series. Just a little bit more about the people behind them, and a couple of those fun sort of surprises, things you may or may not know about related to this project. That again, if you're a completionist like me, you're gonna wanna pick up. Well, one of the coolest things about the Shadows of the Empire is that a lot like some of the movies, including even the Clone Wars movie, there are not just novelizations, like the Terry Brooks Phantom Menace novelization or the amazing Matt Stover Revenge of the Sith novelization. There are junior novel adaptations of those books as well, and they're a lot of fun to have, and they're a lot of fun to read, and they look great on the shelf. But what's really neat is that Shadows of the Empire has a junior novelization as well, and at first you might be thinking, well, do I really need that? It's just sort of an adaptation. If I've got the book, if I've read the story, do I really need it? Well, again, if you're a completionist, who the heck doesn't want to have an extra book on the shelf, right? And it looks really good too if you've got a lot of the other junior novelizations. And at some point, maybe I'll do a video on all of the different young adult novelizations of the different films and various things. But it's a really substantive book. I mean, I think we're talking about 160 odd pages. It's a good adaptation. It's a fun read. Frankly, if you haven't read Shadows of the Empire yet, maybe you want to take a shortcut and just give this bad boy a try first. But I think either way, I think it recommends itself along with the main book. I think it's worth getting both, and both are incredibly easy to find. I mean, of course, Shadows of the Empire is still in print now in paperback with the Legends banner. Like I said, though, this book written by Steve Perry. Now, Steve Perry is someone who he comes back from time to time in the Star Wars Legends EU. He's written the MedStar duology. Was involved in the amazing novel Death Star. So it's kind of fun to see writers like him continue to sort of come back. There are lots of regulars. We know our Timothy Zahns and Kevin J. Andersons and James Lucinos, and the list goes on and on. But it's really neat with writers like Steve Perry. They're around every decade or so, but what they did was so pivotal, left such a huge impact. It's just really exciting. Now, Perry didn't actually write the junior novelization. That fell to Christopher Golden. Now, if you followed some of the sort of choose your adventure style sort of fantasy or sci-fi books, you might know Christopher Golden. The main other thing he did for the Star Wars EU was to write choose your own adventure books for the original trilogy. So there's 3. You can still find them, but they're pretty expensive actually. Sometimes people on eBay will sell them all as a set, which is a pretty good value because if you buy them individually, at least based on recent prices, you're gonna pay a pretty penny. And it's funny, it's ironic. I mean, you're going to be paying a lot for Choose Your Own Adventures, only portions of which are really part of the EU canon. I mean, not unlike a lot of video games, right? I mean, depending on how you choose to play the game, I mean, if you're playing Luke Skywalker in a game and you die on Tatooine, well, that's not really canon, right? In the same way that there's really only one path through these books that ultimately is canon, but it's really fun, the stuff that's in effect non-canon or infinities. It's really neat. Like, for instance, in the golden choose your own adventure of A New Hope. I mean, you can decide to basically, like not join Han on the Kessel Run or not save Princess Leia. I mean, there's some pretty dark potential paths that you might end up taking depending on sort of the choices you make. But it's really cool, and it's a really neat additional sort of contribution to the EU that Christopher Golden makes. Not only this, but these choose your own adventures. Okay, so those are the books, right? And it would be cool enough if it just stopped there, because not every adult novel got its own junior novelization, right? But we get to take it one step further. Like I said, they're definitely action figures. There's lots of sort of ways in which you can literally sort of play with these characters in real life with the toys, right? But one of the coolest things about this was that it was a media tie-in in the truest, broadest sense. So it wasn't just books, wasn't just comics. One of the coolest things about this was, of course, it was also a video game. Now, good luck. You might not have the console anymore, but I'm pretty sure you can still find at least the game out there online on eBay at whatever gaming stores you go to. So anyway, it's great, right? You can read the book, you can read the junior novelization, you can play with the toys, and you can play with the video game. I mean, what more could you ask for? Well, fortunately, Shadows of the Empire, they have an answer, and it's comics. So there are several comics that are related to this. There is a Shadows of the Empire adaptation. There's actually a sequel, Shadows of the Empire Evolution, sort of a direct sort of sequel to the main storyline. And there's actually something too that's sort of related, kind of comes in the aftermath, and it's a Mara Jade story, another great character from the Amazing Bantam era. And the really nice thing is that you can collect these individually. Well, of course, you can find the issues or you can find the individual trade paperbacks. But if you're looking for a value, what you're going to want to do is pick up the Dark Horse Omnibus on the Shadow of the Empire. And it collects all three of those, both the Shadows storyline, the Shadows Evolution storyline, and the Mara Jade storyline. These unfortunately are not in print anymore. You can buy them digitally, I think, and you're going to buy them digitally, and they'll come with the Legends banner, which is a great way of supporting the Legends movement and sending a signal to Lucasfilm and Disney that this stuff is selling. People still love this stuff, so it's always a good idea. Some of these omnibuses, as you may or may not know, are harder to find than others. This is, I don't know, somewhere in between. It definitely pops up online from time to time. Every once in a while, you might find it in a used bookstore, comic book shop. It's not too expensive. I mean, unfortunately, some of these omnibuses are hundreds of dollars now at this point, like the Tales of the Jedi. I mean, good luck finding a complete set for under a couple hundred. It's a real shame. But this one, I think whatever the price is worth it if you want to really build this complete Shadows of the Empire set. Okay, again, you're thinking, boy, how much better could it get? We've got the books, we've got the adult novelizations, we've got the action figures, we've got the video games, we've got the comics, collectible in multiple sorts of formats. How much more could there be? Well, again, Shadows of the Empire says a lot more, because in addition to all of these things, it is truly a multimedia project. There's actually a soundtrack. So again, kind of in the way that it's unique for having a junior novelization, not unlike the movies. A lot of the movies, right? The movies have soundtracks as well. Some of the video games have soundtracks, right? Like Old Republic and Force Unleashed. Shadows of the Empire, no different. So cool, they went the extra mile, right? And again, this isn't, they're one of the early movers here, right? They're one of the first sort of multimedia projects in the Star Wars saga to be this ambitious, to also put out something like a soundtrack. So you can read the books, you can read the comics, you can play with the action figures and play the video games, all while now listening to Shadows of the Empire soundtrack in the background. And again, you're asking yourself, okay, well, that's amazing. Could there be anything else? The answer is yes. Shadows of the Empire goes even further. And if you've seen some of my earlier videos, I've talked a little bit about some reference guides. And again, I want to do a lot more on all the different reference guides. But one of the coolest things is that, like I said, man, how unique is it that just a book in the EU has its own junior novelization, right? How cool is it that a book has its own video game? How cool is it that a book essentially has its own soundtrack and so on and so forth? It also has its own reference guide. Secrets of Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. Love that cover. In fact, you know what? I should also add, guess what? It goes one step further. There was an old t-shirt back in the day, an official licensed t-shirt that for the Shadows of the Empire. On the back, it had this logo, and on the front, it's got this face. And if anyone sees me at any Comic-Con conventions or whatever, I always try and wear it. So if you see that, maybe you'll recognize the face. It's a really fun shirt. It's I don't know how easy it is to find anymore, but it's out there. There's just so much Shadows of the Empire stuff. It just never seems to stop. This is really, really good. I mean, it gets into really every aspect of the entire multimedia project, from the books to the movies to the music. A lot of great illustrations, color illustrations, for instance, lots of great Ralph McQuarrie early concept work. There's things in here you see, particularly from McQuarrie, that are really helpful, not just to understanding Shadows, but kind of giving you a sense of where lots of the EU was sort of going to go from there. I mean, this comes out a number of years before the prequels, and what's interesting is you're looking at McQuarrie artwork of what then I think is known as just the Imperial City, and it looks uncannily like the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. So you get this sense that it's just neat that the saga is building, the expanded universe is building. There's so much to sort of draw on, right? So I think particularly for not just the insights into the entire Shadows of the Empire, but just for the insights into just the broader Star Wars saga, this guide is definitely worth it. So, the question always is, do you need all this stuff? Should you get all this stuff? Well, of course, the answer is yes. Of course, you should have the biggest, most awesomest Star Wars expanded universe collection possible. But, is the junior novelization worth it? Yeah, it's a fun thing, I think, to get into. It's a really quick, easy read. It's also a really great thing, I think, to give to people to introduce them, not just to the Shadow storyline, but I think to, I don't know, just Bantam era stuff in general and some of these great characters. Should you get the comics? I absolutely think you should. And again, I'd really recommend getting the omnibus trade paperback digitally, or if you can find it used. And again, at the end of the day, man, in addition to the soundtracks, and if you can find the old console, go ahead and play the video games. But should you get this reference guide? I really do think you should. It's an obscure thing, but I think particularly for us Legends fans, it's just a neat artifact and a neat reminder of just how important, just how seriously the Star Wars franchise took the EU. I mean, this isn't just a sort of cash grab guide to the latest book and the latest product. I mean, there is a lot of love here, and so much of the content here about the development of this project really shows that. A really great regard for further integration of these storylines into the main storyline. The incredibly expanding universe. There's just this sense that it's all Star Wars and it's all good, and that's what the EU was all about. So anyway, that's Shadows. This video went on way longer than I thought it would, but again, there's just so much to talk about, even when we're only talking about one story. All right, that's it for tonight. I'll see you later.